Hello, and welcome to the King Pair podcast. And today we have quite a bit to talk about, so let's get right into it. I'm joined by LBK. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. And let's maybe begin with the WPL auctions that happened this Monday. And obviously, there was a lot of expectations and a lot of speculations going into the auctions. Obviously, the money being one of the bigger things. We had already seen the coaching staffs of the teams, which were basically just rehashed versions of the 100 coaching staff or coaching staff from WBBL, which was kind of interesting. But let's start with the bigger things, and by that I mean the bigger sales. There's Smriti Mandana, who went for 3.4 crores, which is basically like 4,000, 400,000 USDs. And there's then Ashley Gardner and Natsir Brunt, who basically went for a few less, like 30,000 US dollars less. So first point, were you expecting them to go for this big money when the purse itself was not that high? I mean, basically, Smriti Manna herself cost RCB like 30% of their purse. So was there any expectations? Because I was actually expecting the franchisees to start pulling out of the running bid once they reached like 2 crores or 200 million or something, 20 million.
I think because the tournament's going to be so short and also not very, as labor intensive, as physically challenging as it could be. So there's a lot more room to, splurge 30% of your budget on a single player and then maybe go for a smaller squad of 15, 14 players because you don't really need that many.
And interesting thing is, I mean, I think everyone expected Manna to go for a big amount, not necessarily, you know, certain amount or, 300, 400K maybe. But I think there is some surprise, if not a lot, on the number two and number three, not because they did not deserve it or anything, but because there were some other names that you'd probably expect to go a little higher. Harmanpreet Kaur, also she went for like half of what these guys went for, or even Elise Perry. So there's that. But yeah, so about that, let's talk about the number two and three, because someone actually talked about obviously the ripple effect of WPL money on the 100 and WBBL, and in the same sense, they said that Nat Silver would earn what two and a half squads of the 100 earn in 20 days. You know, so that puts things into perspective. And similarly, what Ashley Gardner earns is like one and a half times of what a whole WBBS squad earns. What does this money point to? Because does this push WBBL to, or even the 100, to pump more money into their you know players? Does their pay suddenly increase? Because we did not see that happen with the IPL or even the other franchisees. But do you think it will happen? Do you think there would be some kind of effort or some time kind of knee-jerk reaction from the whole big money thing?
I don't think it'll happen this season, but maybe within the next 5 years they'll sort of be pushed to raise their salary caps, raise their purse limits because now there's another league in town and this league can outbid them for players. So we're gonna get into this a bit more later, but some players have pulled out of the 100 because they don't really need it anymore with all the money they're getting from the WPL. So if the WBBL want to keep a lot of their best players, keep a lot of stop the best players in the world from skipping them, then they're gonna have to start paying them even more. And yeah, I guess this sort of, I'm not gonna say it's a bad thing, but it does like reinforce something we've seen a lot in the men's game where India is very much dominant from a financial point of view. The IPL is very dominant from a financial point of view, and it just sort of drowns out everyone else. That hasn't really been the case in women's cricket so far, but now with the WPL coming and very much showing off how much money they have to throw around, um, it's very likely that women's cricket starts to go the same way as men's cricket does, at least in the franchise level.
That's interesting because one thing that keeps moving kept moving on my mind when WPL had not been announced, and obviously back then there was a lot of noise about why it has not started. Obviously there was a general idea that it would start sooner or later, and it did, obviously. But what I thought, what I thought almost always was that at some point of time this was going to happen. Like obviously, whenever uh, BCCI would come up with their own league, they would be, obviously, as you said, big in money, and probably it will also be bigger in attractions. Maybe the smaller players who did not get a big amount would earn a lot out of sponsorships. That's a different thing. But there were some players that did not get sold, and there were some shocking names in it, especially with someone like Amy Jones, who is actually probably the best wicket keeper bat after Alisa Healy in the whole women's circuit. And there's also Laura Volvard, who, well, she's one of the best. So there's also shock about that. So what did you think of this whole strategy early on? Because I felt like these players just suffered from the fact that the people that were called out before them got so such big bids that the franchisees almost thought that if they go for these people, the bid might go high again, and there might not be any money left. Do you think it was going on the back of their mind, or was it just they did not want that player? I mean, who wouldn't want Amy Jones? She's a really great batter and wicketkeeper. So, what do you think happened there?
Yeah, I sort of mentioned this before, but like because it's such a short tournament, I think franchises are more willing to spend a lot of money on a few players and go for smaller squads. And the side effect of that was that a lot of very good players just didn't get bids later on because the franchise didn't have money to give, didn't have enough money to be able to afford them, and also to afford to get a full squad of 11, which is sort of the most important thing. But yeah, it's just, yeah. So I feel that's one part of it. Another part of it is probably, that's still like the people bidding for these teams, the people who are responsible for um, team building, and it's just not as developed in women's cricket as it is in men's cricket. So a lot of very good players get overlooked. We definitely saw this a lot with a lot of the associate players. The only associate player who got picked up was Tara Norris, and she's not really. I'm not going to say she's not an associate player because she has played for the U.S., but like she's made most of her name playing in England and playing in the 100, playing in the English leagues. This is very much something we see in the men's IPL as well, where there's a heavy emphasis on players from a certain few countries, and that's definitely the case in the women's in the WPL right now as well. Like we just saw that with some countries got heavy preference, especially Australia and England, based on how they do at World Cups, how they do at the big women's events, and there just hasn't been the time or the development in women's cricket yet for that to be different so far. So even though a lot of very good players missed out, um, I'm sure that'll change in future years as just the whole system becomes more streamlined. As some teams do very poorly and they realize it's because that they could have invested smarter in other places. Maybe as the league grows and there's a much bigger emphasis on bigger squads, as regulations around how many players you're allowed change. This is still the first season. There's a lot that both the owners and both us just don't know yet, and we'll see. Like this will change in future years as franchises learn better auction strategies, better team building strategies, and yeah, like something like the men's auction, IPL auction is it should be this like hyper focused, purely data driven machine. Teams should know exactly what they want to do, have like 20 different backups, they run these like mock auctions days before the tournament. They have ideas of what other teams want, and like it should be this like it should be super efficient. Every player pick should be for the right money, for the right team, filling in a certain gap. But even then, the men's IPL auction is very silly, very often. You get a lot of really wild picks for ridiculous money that should never happen. And yeah, I guess that just sort of shows like who these owners are, who the people bidding are. They still have a bit of a vain streak, right? They think they can catch a gold, and worse, they might not be. And yeah, that probably was another factor in the women's IPL auction where they.
That's funny because you pointed out how the tournament is relatively small, basically 9 to 10 games for the team that wins it, maybe 9 or 10 depending how they rank. But actually, looked like Mumbai was uh, kind of going in with exactly the mentality that you are pointing out, because they paid I think some of the biggest money. I mean, not in terms of money, but they have the most number of players whose cost exceeds 1 crore. So they have basically Harmanpreet Kaur, Natsir Brandt, Amelia Kar, uh, Pooja Vastrakar, and Jastika Bhatia, all of whom cost them 10 million INR or more. And at one point, it looked like they would not even have a squad of 15. I was thinking maybe they would get disqualified, because when the auction was supposed to end, they only had 14, a squad of 14 players, which meant the auction had to go on half an hour longer, because Mumbai still needed to buy at least 2 or 3 players, which they did by kind of buying everyone who costed them a million, basically. And it actually shows. What do you think is more efficient? Because at one side you see Mumbai, which basically follows whatever you said, and then on the other side there's Delhi, who were much more planned. They did not run out of their funds. They actually still had 3.5 million in their purse when it ended, and they had a full squad plus, well, if you want to call it that, an associate player. So uh, you know which one are you favoring? Do you want to be Delhi in this situation, or do you want to be Mumbai with big players, or Delhi with a relatively small but a more planned and perfectly organized squad?
I think it would be much cooler to see Delhi do well and to see Mumbai do well. But at the same time, with just how the tournament is, I feel like it'll be hard for Delhi to do very well this year. But like in a tournament which is played at more venues, which has more teams, which has more games, then I can see Delhi doing a lot better then. But it's still a little bit away.
So also there were two new teams, well, two new franchises to be precise, the Gujarat Giants and UP Warriors, and they actually had some very interesting picks. Kind of want to get deeper into it, but having looked at someone like Gujarat Giants squad, do you think they kind of came out of this auction as one of the best units?
Yeah, they definitely look pretty good, but yeah, like as with all T20 leagues, right? Like there's still a little bit to the tournament. Things could change between now and then. And yeah, again, it's a short tournament at a few venues, so it makes like team building a lot more challenging. You can't like build around a specific style and tailor your home ground to be like that because you're only at two venues that are two nominally neutral venues, so you can't control your home games that much. And yeah, hopefully we get there someday. But yeah, like I think that makes the trim a lot less exciting. But anyways, um, yeah, they look a solid unit. They should do quite well. But again, like anything can happen in such a short tournament, so few games, and with a pretty high proportion of the games being knockout games. But yeah, we'll see.
Also, obviously there's no real planning. As you said, there's you can't really plan for these grounds, because it is obviously neutral, a home ground for a few players here. Jimmy Rodriguez, of course, and a few others. But coming to the point which I wanted to talk about is even though these teams, the newer ones, they did bid big money. Obviously, Gujarat Giants bid for Ash Gardner. They got her for 3.2 crore, and UP Warriors got Deepti Sharma for 2.6. But I think the bigger point is they got some big names by staying late in the auction rather than going really early in, because you see some names here like Grace Harris, or even Alyssa Healy, which they actually got for a really reasonable price. I mean, even Shabnam Smile could have gone for bigger money, knowing that she has already had a lot of exploits in WBBL and the 100. And similarly, actually, my point was regarding Gujarat Giants, because they got Sophia Dunkley, Annabelle Sutherland, Harleen Deol, and Deandra Doughton, all for basically half the price, a combined half the price than what they paid for Ash Gardner. And that's basically top four of their six batters. Maybe throw in Meghna and Meghna as well, and it would still be a little, just a little more than the half of what Ash Gardner was paid. So, do you think this was kind of a big win for these teams, because they kind of held their horses early on and kind of got to cash in later, and it kind of showed?
Yeah, like as a lot of the other teams blew their money early on, these teams were able to hoover up some of the players that came in later for much cheaper, and yeah, that definitely helps them. And yeah, it'll they got some quality players for much cheaper, but again, like it's a short tournament. You don't really need that many players, so like we'll just have to see how well that pays off for them. This would be a really good strategy if there were more games to play. But if you're only playing 8 games, then you can get away with not having a perfectly balanced team. And yeah, I don't think it'll hold back the teams like Mumbai and RCB that much this year. But if they're saddled with these players for a couple of years in longer tournaments and different, more expansive tournaments, then yeah, they could come back to bite them later. I think they should get away fine in the first year. It's just how the tournament is set up.
So, talking about the tournament and its length, something else that might course with it is the money pressure that we keep talking about every time an auction happens in IPL, maybe men's IPL, women's IPL. Well, there's always the money pressure. We've talked about it with Ishan Kishan, who got big amount. Even Deepak Chahar, he basically got injured, but not about them. So here's my question actually regarding that itself. The tournament is small. The players obviously will be tired from the World Cup itself. They'll be coming in roughly with a 10-day gap before the tournament begins, roughly a week or something, let's say. There's players that are playing in the World Cup itself who have gotten big money. We have already talked about them. And there's certain players that are in the squad. Maybe they are getting a game or not getting a game. Maybe some. So someone like Smriti Mandana, she gets 3.4, and then obviously that settles her up with a lot of expectations, both from Indian fans and from RCB fans. And then on Gujarat side, who I think someone named them the Krigwiz intent squad, there's someone like Harleen Deol who has not gotten that big of a money, and she might not even have that big of a weight of expectations. So, do you think that could play a role in this tournament, because it happened with the Gujarat Titans in the men's IPL? Do you think it would be the same with Gujarat Giants, because no expectation means there's a lot of weight off your shoulders, I guess? Is this that way?
Yeah, like that will play a part in it. Yeah, but not having so many players with the money, big money pressure on them, it'll definitely help because like at the top level of cricket, a lot of the small differences are they're purely mental, and yeah, just giving your players that small mental edge that can definitely help. Yeah, we'll have to see exactly. It'll be a while before we see this play out. The term is still a few months away, and a lot can change between now and then with the whole World Cup in between. And some players might just be immune to the money pressure because they've never had to deal with it before. So what's there to worry about? No one's had to deal with this sort of money pressure in women's cricket before. So maybe the players won't be that affected by it right now, but we'll see very soon exactly how this goes.
Talking about the money pressure, because honestly, as you said, there's not a, maybe there's probably not even a single one who was paid this big of a money before for such a short stint. There's also the UP Warriors team. Obviously, they are also new, although they assembled a squad that is kind of highly experienced. They have Sophia Custon, who was their second highest paid player with 1.8 crore. Deepti Sharma obviously 2.6, the highest. So talking about them, because we have already talked about Gujarat Warriors, and they kind of have this squad made up of relatively low costing players. UP Warriors, on the other side, they are a much more uniformly spent team, because uh, it was only Deepti Sharma who cost them more than 2 crores. Everyone was kind of inside it, and mostly outside of Talia McGrath and Devika Vaidya. Yeah, right. No one cost them like a lot of money. So they are kind of a different team, and they have kind of this weird setup where they have some big international names, obviously Talia McGrath, Sophia Custon, and then there's some relatively inexperienced names like Lauren Bell or
Yeah, again, like this, the team. Sorry, the team is not bad, um, and yeah, like there's definitely a lot of promise there, and they're a new franchise as well. They want to, the way they've been set up, I think, shows that they want to, try and be taken seriously as a franchise circuit, and build themselves up as someone to follow, unlike Mumbai, RCB, Delhi, who sort of like they're sort of relying on pre-existing brand value to build a fan base. Yeah, like like there are gaps there, but they are set up quite well to take advantage of some of the situations of the tournament and maybe build themselves long term. With they again a very young squad sets them up for retaining a lot of players in future years, and they're trying to build a fan base through continuity of a solid core of players within the team. So yeah, that'll definitely be something to see it over the coming years. And in this first season, like again, it's hard to see them. It's hard to see any team win the first year they're running a cricket team, but weirder things have happened before.
so. Who do you think would be any choice of yours who could prove to be kind of the dark horse as a team, as a player, better bowler, whatever?
I would just like to see a team like Delhi or Gujarat win because they've been set up much better than a team like Mumbai. So I just don't want Mumbai to win. Uh, yeah, I just want to see a team that's been set up smartly to win, instead of a team brute forcing its way through star power and throwing all their money around. I want to see it, proper, clever T20 cricket to come out on top here because I think that'll just be better for the tournament, better for the game as a whole, and just a more interesting story to look at.
So obviously, it would not be an Indian franchisee talk without without talking about the RCB camp, because they seem like they wanted to buy every possible big name. Actually, they went for many more names than they got. So about them, because they have gotten a lot of international experience in their squad. There's like five captains or four, maybe Heather Knight, there's Danavan Nikak, there's, I don't know if Elise Perry was ever the captain. I think there's at least four, and Erin Burns, if you want to count out, I think he she has captained her domestic side, if I know. But how about that? Because we do not exactly uh, relate the whole T20 thing with experience. There's a lot of times people talk about it being a youth game. So, how does their team stack up in that case? There's a lot of experience, obviously. There's a lot of players in their 30s, even mid 30s at this point. So, and on the Indian front, a lot of people were thinking that they kind of left a lot on the Indian front because their domestic players apparently are known, not known names. I think I know a few of them, and I think Kanika Ahuja and Indrani Roy have done really well in the domestic circuit. So, what do you think of them? Because they seem like they kind of went big with the overseas names, except for Divine and Nikirk, but kind of left something with the Indian names, or do you think it is kind of fine to leave that hole in the middle when you have such big names coming up top, and they can maybe, the experience can kind of seep down to the youngsters?
Like it'll definitely there will probably be one or two games where it comes off spectacularly and they win by like 200 runs, 150 runs with, scoring huge score and bowling the other team out for next to nothing. But like it's not something you can consistently rely on. So yeah, they probably will be one of the weaker teams overall, but they will do something crazy in the tournament.